Welcome in, Shield Brothers and Shield Maidens, to Shield's Rest. We're excited to continue our look at the Worlds Without Numbers system in this second chapter. If you haven't had the opportunity, please go back and check out Chapter 1, where we talk about introduction to the game and character creation. Today, we're going to start with Chapter 2, which is going to cover the basics of the system. This includes skill checks, saving throws, and also combat. However, we're going to put combat in its own video, so please stick around and look at the next chapter, which will be dedicated solely to the combat. So we're going to start first by talking about just some general things that they introduce in Chapter 2, such as being able to translate your action into rolls. So basically, that's just the concept of having you roll for what you're trying to do, and then the outcome is based on the results of that roll. Also, like other systems, the GM decides what check you're rolling for and also what the outcome might be. And they make the rules, so don't try to argue with them. Though it is a pretty rules light system, so you shouldn't run into that too much. And you want to focus on the experience, not the rules themselves. But I will pass it to Fry to start, where he's going to give us a breakdown of these scenes, turns, and durations.
So when it comes to durations in the system, right? So things like, this lasts a turn or this lasts 1 minute or 10 minutes. In other systems for Worlds Without Numbers, there's only two big ones that you need to know. The first one is what the system calls a scene. So this is the duration of most effects. Every time you use an effect, it'll usually say it lasts for one scene. This is for things like a fight is a scene, maybe a conversation or a negotiation is a scene, sneaking in or out of a building is a scene, something that's typically like 15 minutes and it's kind of just like one event, right? And then the other thing that you have is turns. So these are used to track time, typically for exploration. So, you're exploring a dungeon, each room or each hallway that you navigate is a turn. If you're in a maze or a ruin, each kind of like section is a turn. It kind of helps you just to monitor things like light sources, rolling for monster encounters, movement speeds, and things like that. Typically around 10 minutes, right? So that's 10 minutes is what it takes to kind of explore a room, navigate a hallway or anything like that. They do still count as a scene for when it matters, right? So if you're using your abilities and things like that that reset on a scene, the turn still counts for that. But those are the kind of two different durations that you have in the game and that you need to monitor for tracking purposes. So real quick, easy, nothing too complicated. You don't have a bunch of different time slots that you have to memorize or things like that.
And we're going to transition over to saving throws. In this system, utilize a d20, so that shouldn't be much different than what you're used to. However, there are four types of saving throws that would be affecting a player character. The first one we're going to start with is called evasion saves. This is for situations that require you to be nimble or act quickly, what you would expect, right? The way that saves work in this system is it starts with a flat 16, and then it takes out your hero level. So if we use Jordan in the example from the Chapter 1 character creation, she's level 1, so that would take it down to a 15 that she would need to make. However, you also add in the intelligence or dexterity modifier, which one's higher, which she also has a 1. So 16 minus 1 for her level, minus 1 for her attribute. That would be a 14 that she would need to make for an evasion save. And that same thing will kind of play out through these. Next up, we have the mental saves. These are for situations that help you resist those mind affecting magics or tests of willpower. And again, same thing there. It's the 16 minus the hero's level minus either wisdom or charisma, higher of the two. And with physical saves, this is for things based on your physical strength. Same concept, 16 minus the hero's level minus either strength or constitution, the higher of the two. And then we have luck saves, which the only difference here is that it's a flat 16 minus the hero's level, so you don't get any actual attribute towards a luck save. And of course, that's for situations that are based blindly on fortune or luck of outcome. For the adversary or monster side of the system, there's just one flat saving throw. So if you're a DM for this system, it's a little bit less to keep up with on that sense, but really more because you got to keep up with the player characters too, I guess. So maybe you have an extra one to worry about. But their saving throw is just equal to 15 minus half of the hit dice that they have rounded down.
Yeah, I love that saving throw system because now all you have to do is you're just rolling higher than that, right, on the d20, and you never have to worry about save DCs, right? You don't have to like worry about making one up or worry about like different numbers it's always a set number until your like level goes up or you change your attributes. So it's super easy to keep track of once they're on there. You always have the number ready to go. Yeah, jumping into skill checks. This one is going to utilize the 2d6s instead of the d20. It's going to be 2d6 plus whichever skill you're using plus the modifier that you're using with. The system is a little flexible in that the attributes aren't necessarily tied to the skill. It's kind of whatever is happening in the moment. So you have some leeway on which skill ability you're using, sorry, attribute that you're using with the skill that you're using. Uh, when you make the roll, you will take a -1 penalty if you do not have any points in that skill. So that's basically saying you're unskilled in it. If you have less than that level 0, which the system starts with 0 to 4, if you don't have any points in it, you're going to take a -1 to that roll. And then if multiple skills could apply, the PC gets to choose which one is most applicable, which one they want to use. Typically, the difficulties for these are set kind of in twos, right? 6 for something that's super easy. You shouldn't be failing it, but there is a small chance of failure. 8, 10, 12, and all the way up to over a 14, which is a very difficult check with a high risk of failure. And then you can also have a +2 or a -2 based on kind of the difficulty of the situation. So that'll kind of be up to the GM to decide if something is particularly more difficult or if you have something kind of set against you on top of whatever the skill level is. That shouldn't be more than a 2 modifier. So it should always say -2 or plus. And you can also aid a skill check if you're another PC. So for this, whatever the main PC is doing, you can assist them. The skill doesn't have to be the same. However, the difficulty level will be the same. So if the difficulty level set to 10 for like sneaking in somewhere and you want to distract a guard, you can use a different skill set, but the difficulty level will remain at 10 for both parties. If you succeed in aiding them, you'll add a +1 to their skill check, and you can never receive more than that +1 bonus. So you don't have to have everybody trying to do something to stack on. As soon as one person succeeds, they add that +1, and then they're good to go. For opposed skill checks. So this is PCs versus an NPC. Maybe it's a grappling, things like that. It's the first one I can always think of when it's an opposed check. So all participants roll their skills. The highest score wins. And if there is a tie, the tie goes to the player character. So you always have that slight advantage when it comes to those opposed skill checks. So super simple skills are not hard in this one. It's all just the 2d6 skill modifier. Then you go from there. And then I will throw it back on over to Brown, who's going to go over one of my favorite parts of the system, which is the injury, healing, and system strain of the system.
Well, this is the real meat and potatoes of this system, right? And we've talked about it before, like in the last video, but there's a real threat of death in this system, which is an awesome mechanic, right, to have to worry about. But it's equally important that dying and surviving is equally important to both player characters and the non-player characters. If you are important enough to survive death, then you get what is called mortally wounded. These creatures are unable to act, so it's kind of like you're unconscious in a way. At the end of the 6th round, you will die, or if you take more damage at any point. So just if that doesn't click with you, you're basically like, once you're mortally wounded, yeah, there's a real threat of dying, so don't get close to that. However, other player characters can use an intelligence heal or dexterity heal skill check for their main action and try to attempt to stabilize a downed player character. The difficulty is 8 plus the number of rounds since you've been downed, so I do like that it gets more difficult to save you as the scene goes on, which makes sense. And that difficulty is further increased by 2 if there's not a healer with actual medical implements, so don't leave that stuff at home. And you can only try to stabilize once per round, so kind of like with the skill checks and aiding them, you can't just, everybody gets a turn to try to save them. It's once per round to try to save the individual from being mortally wounded. Once they do become stabilized, they don't gain 1 hit point until 10 minutes after, so even if you're successful in your check, they're still pretty much down and out for the fight. And they get another condition called frail, which this is a fun part of the system too. You have to actually get a week of bed rest or an hour with a physician that makes a successful skill check, right, and works on you for that full hour. Those are the only 2 ways to remove that frailty condition, and it only removes it 1 time for each attempt at that. And you'll die immediately if you hit 0 before that frail condition is removed from you. So even after you recover from mortally wounded, you don't want to walk around being frail and get into more combat. We look into the natural healing side of things, right? And this is, you can recover your level or hit dice and lost hit points after each night's rest. However, you do lose 1 point of system strain, and frail creatures do not recover hit points in that way, nor do they lose system strains. You're just kind of in that flux of being frail. For magical healing, though, it automatically cures the mortally wounded and frail condition, and they will immediately rise if you are able to heal them that way on the battlefield. So make sure you have a good healer with you. And I will pass it back to Fry to help me talk about some of the other parts of this.
Magical healing is really great. However, if you don't have that, you can also apply first aid. So this does take a healer in the sense of somebody who has the heal skill. You can cure 1d6 plus whatever your heal skill is. You have a -1 penalty still to that if you do not have the heal skill, and that could equal out to 0, right? So if you don't have the heal skill, you're trying to apply first aid, you roll a 1 on the die, you take that -1. So you run the risk of that if you don't have the heal skill. So you're not going to do anything bad necessarily. Just know that you could fail basically on that first aid. Each application of first aid causes 1 system strain on the target, which we talked about a little bit and we'll get into here in just a second. This can restore hit points to frail targets, but it does not cure the condition. So this is kind of the one way that frail targets can receive healing is applying that first aid. We do have to worry about system strain with all this healing. So most healing, unless it says otherwise, and certain magical power that adds strain to the target of your healing, right? Your maximum system strain is equal to your constitution attribute. So if it's 13, you basically have a 13 system strain. And then for every bit of this healing that impacts your system strain, you're kind of chucking down at that. And once that hits 0 or full, right, you get 13 points of system strain, you will no longer gain benefits from healing. So this does put a kind of stopper on the healing in the game. So you can't just kind of rely too much on the healer, right? You'll eventually tap out on healing. So don't push yourself too hard in the sense of like you can't go out dungeon exploring day in, day out. You do have to kind of rest to get that system strain back. You will reduce your system strain for every full night of rest that you get. So not too hard to manage. However, if you max out and you get to that 13 system strain, you are going to have to heal, basically rest for 2 weeks to fully get rid of those system strain points. And then finally, we have poison and diseases. So with a poison, if you ingest it or anything like that, you will have a kind of a saving throw, a pass or fail, just depending on the type of poison. You could have a -4 or a +4 to that, depending on the strength of the poison. If you make the save, great, you are not poisoned. If you fail the save, you basically succumb to whatever the type of poison is, whether that's a damaging poison, something that's draining your strength, anything like that. It's just kind of like a one-time save or fail. Then you also have diseases similar to the poison. You have that kind of like pass or save fail. You pass, great, you kind of ward off the disease. However, if you fail that save, you slowly succumb to the disease. So it's not as instant necessarily as a poison. However, you have to keep making those saving throws as the poison goes on. And if you keep failing, you get that third or fourth fail, that's when the disease kind of becomes deadly and fatal. So this one, you kind of have a couple more chances to get through, but it will kind of kill you in the long run, whereas the poison's more kind of instantaneous. But if you contract either of these, healers can tend to the sick, and they grant a bonus to their saving throw equal to twice their heal skill, or a +1 if their heal is at the 0 skill. So that is just when you're doing your saving throw. If you have a healer available, they can kind of help you with that save to kind of overcome that disease. But that is kind of the healing system in a nutshell. I really like it. I like a deadlier game. I'm a Dark Souls fan. When it comes to video games, all those kinds of Souls like. So I love a good deadly hard system, and this scratches that itch very well for me.
Yeah, I'll just say death definitely lurks around every corner. I think we kind of breezed through this, but half of what we talked about was, the threat of death. So I like that this system really puts a lot of emphasis on that, and it really carries it throughout the system from what I've seen. So it's that realism in the game that I haven't really seen in other fantasy games. But I mean, something like when I was reading through the diseases, I was like, wow, that's actually really cool how they did that. You can like try to resist the disease, and then it'll just grow worse, and there's nothing you can do about it, kind of thing. You have to like always worry about it. So I like elements of the game like that. However, that's going to wrap it up for this video. So please, again, watch the first one. Look forward to the third one, where we're going to talk about combat. We're going to look to apply some of these things so that it can make a little bit more sense as we walk through maybe a combat encounter and show some of the things that this system has to offer with that. Please check the description also. We are opening our Discord for people to join if you would like to see what that server's like and interact with us a little bit. No pressure. Like, comment, subscribe, and share. And until next time, keep that shield wall strong.